Mr. Harrison was a man who had everything money could buy: luxury cars, tall buildings, and respect across the nation's business world. But none of that mattered now. Not when the strongest man he had ever known, his father, Mr. Bright Harrison, lay helpless on a wide hospital bed, groaning in pain. It started quietly. Just a small itching on Mr. Bright's left leg. At first, everyone thought it was nothing serious. He was old after all. Small discomforts were expected. Mr. Bright laughed it off and said it would pass. But the itching did not stop. It became sharper, deeper, like something crawling under his skin. Within a week, the leg began to swell. The swelling grew fast, too fast. The skin became tight and shiny. Mr. Bright could no longer place his foot on the ground without crying out. Soon, he could not walk at all. Even sleep left him. The pain woke him every night, leaving him weak and tired by morning. Mr. Harrison spared no expense. He moved his father from one modern hospital to another private clinics, with clean white walls, advanced machines, and doctors with long lists of qualifications. Blood tests were done. Scans were repeated. Medicines were changed again and again. Nothing worked. Some doctors said it was an infection. Others said it was nerve damage. A few blamed age. They gave injections, tablets, and strong painkillers. The pain reduced for a short time, then returned worse than before. Weeks passed. The swelling spread up the leg. Mr. Bright lost weight. His face became thin, his voice weak. The man who once walked proudly with a straight back now needed help just to turn in bed. Mr. Harrison watched all this with a broken heart. One night, he sat alone in his office, staring at his phone. That was when he made the call. Dr. Edward. Everyone knew the name. Dr. Edward was one of the most respected doctors in the country. He had treated powerful people and saved lives others had given up on. When Dr. Edward arrived at the Harrison mansion, hope returned to the house. Dr. Edward examined Mr. Bright carefully. He asked many questions. He studied the swollen leg for a long time. He ordered more tests and changed the treatment plan. For the first 2 days, everyone waited. Nothing changed. By the 4th day, Mr. Bright screamed in pain again. The swelling remained. The itching returned, fierce and burning. Dr. Edward stood quietly by the bed that evening, his face serious. "I am sorry," he said at last. "We are doing everything modern medicine allows." Mr. Harrison felt his knees weaken. If Dr. Edward could not help, who could? In his desperation, Mr. Harrison made an announcement. He promised a huge reward to anyone at all, who could help save his father. The news spread quickly through the mansion. But inside the same mansion, someone else had been watching silently. Her name was Amara. Amara was just 25. Poor. Quiet. She worked as a maid, cleaning rooms and carrying water. Most people barely noticed her. But she noticed everything. She had seen the leg from the beginning. She had seen the way it swelled. She had smelled something strange in the wound when no one else paid attention. It reminded her of something from her childhood village, something her late grandmother used to treat with herbs. Amara's heart beat fast as she thought about it. Could it help? She was afraid to speak. She was only a maid. What would they say if she mentioned herbs when famous doctors had failed? Still, she could not ignore what she knew. That evening, Amara gathered her courage and approached Mrs. Harrison quietly. "There is something I know," she said softly, her hands shaking. "A local herb. I have seen something like this before." Mrs. Harrison looked at her in surprise and doubt. A maid. A herb. But as she looked back at her husband's suffering father, fear overcame pride. "Tell me more," Mrs. Harrison said. And at that moment, unknown to everyone, hope entered the room again, wearing the simple face of a poor maid. Mrs. Harrison did not answer Amara immediately. She stared at the young maid as if she was trying to decide whether this was courage or foolishness. The room smelled of medicine and fear. Mr. Bright lay on the bed, sweating, his swollen left leg raised on pillows. His breathing was heavy and his face looked tired from too many sleepless nights. Mrs. Harrison lowered her voice. "What herb are you talking about?" Amara swallowed. "In my village, there is a leaf we use for swelling and deep infections. My grandmother used it many times. We crush it, mix it with a little warm water and salt, then rub it on the affected area." Mrs. Harrison frowned. "Is that all?" "No, Ma. Amara said quickly. Sometimes we add the root bark too. It is bitter, but it is strong. Mrs. Harrison looked uncertain. She had lived in comfort most of her life. She believed in hospitals, specialists, and clean medicines sealed in bottles. She did not know what to think about leaves and roots. Still, she could not ignore the truth. The hospitals had not helped. She stepped out of the room and walked quickly down the hallway to find her husband. She met Mr. Harrison in the sitting room, pacing like a man carrying the whole world on his shoulders. "Daniel," she called softly. Mr. Harrison turned. His eyes were red, his shirt slightly wrinkled, as if he had forgotten himself completely. "What is it, Vivian?" Mrs. Harrison hesitated, then spoke. "Amara says she knows a local herb that might help your father." The moment she said it, Mr. Harrison's face hardened. "A herb?" he repeated almost angrily. "Vivian, do you hear yourself? She says she has seen something like this before." Mr. Harrison gave a dry laugh that had no joy in it. "I brought the best doctor in Nigeria. I brought machines. I brought specialists. And now we will turn to a Maid's village leaf." Mrs. Harrison stepped closer. "Daniel, your father is suffering. Dr. Edward has tried. The pain is still there." Mr. Harrison looked away. His jaw tightened. He could not deny it. Just then, Dr. Edward entered the sitting room. He had been on a call with another colleague, and his face showed stress. Mr. Harrison quickly faced him. "Doctor, my wife is saying the Maid has a local herb idea. What do you think?" Dr. Edward's eyebrows rose. He did not like such discussions. He believed in science, but he also believed in reality. And reality was clear. The patient was not improving. "I cannot recommend unknown substances," Dr. Edward said carefully. "However, if you choose to try it, it must be done with caution. We must watch for allergies, bleeding, or worsening infection." "So you are not against it?" Mrs. Harrison asked. "I am not in support," Dr. Edward replied. "But I understand desperation. If you insist, do it under supervision." Mr. Harrison remained silent for a long moment. Then he whispered, "What if it makes him worse?" Mrs. Harrison's voice became firm. "What if it saves him?" That question hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Mr. Harrison finally exhaled. "Bring her." Amara was called in. She stood in front of them with her head slightly bowed, hands folded in respect. She looked small beside the rich couple and the famous doctor. Mr. Harrison studied her face. "Amara," he said slowly, "do you understand what you are suggesting?" "Yes, sir," she answered, her voice calm but trembling inside. "If my father becomes worse because of this, it will not end well," he said. Amara lifted her eyes. They were clear and serious. "Sir, I will not lie. I am not a doctor. But I know what I saw in my village. I only want to help." Dr. Edward watched her closely. He expected fear, but she looked determined. Mrs. Harrison spoke gently. "If we agree, can you get the herb?" "Yes, Ma," Amara said, "but not from here. I need to go to the old market where herbal sellers bring fresh leaves, and I need clean items, warm water, salt, and a clean bowl." Mr. Harrison snapped his fingers at one of the security men. "Take her. Let her buy whatever she needs. Make sure she does not disappear." Amara nodded. She understood. Trust was thin in a house like this. Within an hour, Amara returned with a small black nylon bag. Inside were fresh green leaves, a short piece of brown root bark, and a small bundle tied neatly with rope. Dr. Edward insisted on inspecting everything. He smelled the leaves and checked for anything suspicious. "This is risky," he said again. Amara spoke softly. "Doctor, please, let me try. Just once. If nothing changes, I will stop." Mr. Harrison stood by his father's bed. Mr. Bright looked up at him weakly. "My son," Mr. Bright whispered. "The pain. It is burning me." Mr. Harrison's throat tightened. "Father, hold on." Then he turned to Amara. "Do it." Amara washed her hands carefully. She cleaned a bowl with hot water. She crushed the leaves slowly, using a small wooden mortar and pestle she had brought. The smell of the herb filled the air strong, sharp, and earthy. Mrs. Harrison covered her nose lightly, unsure of the scent. Amara added warm water and a pinch of salt. The mixture became dark green and thick. "Now," Dr. Edward warned, "be gentle. If he bleeds, stop." Amara moved closer to the bed. Her hands shook slightly, but her eyes stayed focused. She gently uncovered Mr. Bright's swollen left leg. The leg looked worse than before. The skin was tight, and near the ankle there was a small opening that looked like a wound, tiny but deep. Dr. Edward stared at it, surprised. "That wasn't that clear yesterday," he murmured. Amara dipped her fingers into the mixture and began to rub it softly on the swollen leg. Mr. Bright flinched at first. "It will sting a little," Amara whispered. "Please endure it." Mr. Harrison watched with a painful mix of fear and hope. Mrs. Harrison held her hands together like someone praying. Dr. Edward stood ready, alert, prepared to stop it at the first sign of danger. Amara continued rubbing the herb slowly, moving from the ankle upward. Then Mr. Bright suddenly gasped. His eyes widened. "What is that?" he whispered. Amara froze. Dr. Edward leaned in closer, his face tightening. The small wound on Mr. Bright's leg moved. Not like blood, not like pus. It moved like something alive. And Mr. Harrison, standing beside the bed, felt his heart slam hard in his chest as he realized something was about to happen that no hospital scan had ever shown. The room went completely silent. Dr. Edward leaned closer to Mr. Bright's leg, his eyes fixed on the small opening near the ankle. What he saw made his breath stop. Something moved again. Slowly. Then another movement followed. Mrs. Harrison covered her mouth with both hands. Mr. Harrison stepped back as if the floor had suddenly shifted under him. What is that?" he whispered. Amara did not panic. Her voice stayed calm. "Sir, please do not stop me now." Dr. Edward raised his hand slightly, ready to interrupt, but he hesitated. In all his years of medical practice, he had never seen this before. Amara gently pressed the herb mixture closer to the wound. Suddenly, a small white worm pushed its way out. Mrs. Harrison screamed and turned away. Mr. Harrison's face went pale. "Worms?" he said in shock. "Inside my father's leg?" Dr. Edward stared in disbelief. "This explains the pain," he said slowly, "and the swelling." Another worm came out, then another. Amara did not rush. She continued rubbing the herb gently, wiping each worm away with a clean cloth. Her hands were steady, as if she had done this many times before. Mr. Bright groaned, then suddenly sighed. "The burning, it is reducing," he said weakly. Everyone froze. "You mean the pain?" Mrs. Harrison asked, turning back slowly. "Yes," Mr. Bright replied. "It is still there, but it is not screaming like before." Dr. Edward touched the leg carefully. The skin was still swollen, but it felt softer than earlier. "Incredible," he murmured. "These parasites were hidden deep. The scans did not show them clearly." Mr. Harrison felt a strange mix of shock and anger. "All the hospitals, all the machines, and nobody saw this?" Dr. Edward lowered his head. "Sometimes medicine has limits." Amara continued her work until no more worms came out. She then cleaned the leg carefully and wrapped it with a clean cloth. "For today, this is enough," she said. "We must repeat it every morning and evening for 5 days." "5 days?" Mr. Harrison repeated. "Yes, sir," Amara said. "That is how my grandmother did it. The herb pulls out what does not belong there and helps the flesh heal." Dr. Edward nodded slowly. "We will monitor him closely. If there is bleeding or fever, we stop." That night, something unusual happened. Mr. Bright slept. For the first time in many weeks, he slept without crying out in pain. His breathing became steady, his body relaxed. Mr. Harrison sat beside the bed, watching his father's chest rise and fall. Tears filled his eyes, not from fear this time, but from hope. The next morning, everyone gathered early. Mr. Bright woke up with a clearer face. "I slept well," he said softly. "The pain is far less." Dr. Edward examined the leg again. The swelling had reduced slightly. "This is not imagination," he admitted. "There is real improvement." Amara repeated the process carefully. This time, fewer worms came out. Mr. Bright winced only slightly. By the 3rd day, the change was obvious. The swelling had reduced greatly. The skin color looked healthier. Mr. Bright could sit up on his own. He even laughed softly at something Mrs. Harrison said. "Doctor," Mr. Harrison asked quietly, pulling Dr. Edward aside. "How did we miss this?" Dr. Edward sighed. "Modern medicine focuses on what machines can see. Traditional knowledge sometimes understands what the body hides. By the fourth day, Mr. Bright stood up with support. Everyone gasped. His legs trembled, but they held him. "I am standing," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. Mrs. Harrison cried openly. Mr. Harrison held his father tightly, afraid to believe what his eyes were seeing. On the fifth day, Amara applied the herb one last time. No worms came out. The swelling was almost gone. Mr. Bright took his first full steps across the room, slow, careful steps, but strong and real. He walked with both legs. The room exploded with joy. Mr. Harrison dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. "God, thank you," he whispered. He then stood up and turned to Amara. The poor maid stood quietly at the corner, her hands folded, her face calm as always. "You saved my father," Mr. Harrison said, his voice breaking. "When doctors could not." Amara bowed her head slightly. "I only shared what I knew, sir." Mr. Harrison looked at her with new eyes, not as a maid, but as a healer. "My father will hear this from me himself," he said firmly. "And when he does, your life will never remain the same." Mr. Bright slowly walked toward Amara and held her hands. "My daughter," he said warmly, "you gave me back my legs and my life." Amara smiled softly, tears shining in her eyes. But what Mr. Harrison planned to do next for Amara and for the world was something no one expected. News of Mr. Bright's recovery spread through the Harrison mansion like wildfire. Servants whispered in corners. Security men shook their heads in disbelief. Even the drivers paused their work to ask questions. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How did the billionaire's father stand and walk again after doctors had failed? Mr. Harrison called a family meeting that same evening. Mr. Bright sat comfortably on a chair, his leg resting firmly on the ground. His face looked brighter, fuller, like a man who had been given back time. "I want to hear everything," Mr. Bright said calmly. Mr. Harrison told the story from the beginning, the hospitals, the pain, Dr. Edward's efforts, and finally Amara's courage. As he spoke, Mr. Bright's eyes never left Amara, who stood quietly at the edge of the room. When the story ended, the old man nodded slowly. "I remember my own mother," Mr. Bright said. "She believed deeply in nature. She always said God placed healing in the earth before we learned how to put it in bottles." He turned to Amara. "Where did you learn this?" "My grandmother, sir," Amara replied. "She was a herbal healer in our village. People came to her when there was no clinic nearby." Mr. Bright smiled. "Then her wisdom lives on." The next day, Mr. Harrison organized a small gathering. Dr. Edward was present, along with close family members. Amara was invited not as a maid, but as a guest. Mr. Harrison stood before everyone, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I made a promise," he said. "I said I would reward anyone who saved my father. That promise stands." He turned to Amara. "Tell me, what do you want?" The room became quiet. Everyone expected Amara to ask for money. A house, a car, maybe education. Amara took a deep breath. "Sir," she began gently, "I do not want riches. I only want a small plot of land." Mr. Harrison blinked. "Land?" "Yes, sir," Amara continued. "I want to grow herbs, properly, cleanly, so I can help people who cannot afford hospitals." The room stirred. "And one more thing," she added, her voice still calm. "Please help me open a small herbal chemist, a place where herbs are prepared safely, with respect." Mr. Harrison stared at her, stunned. "That is all?" he asked. Amara nodded. "That is all I need." Mrs. Harrison wiped her eyes. Dr. Edward smiled softly, filled with respect. Mr. Harrison laughed, not mockingly, but in deep admiration. "You could have asked for anything," he said, "and you chose to help others." He walked closer to her. "Amara, I will give you more than you asked for." Within days, Mr. Harrison fulfilled his promise. He gave Amara a large piece of fertile land just outside the city, far more than a small plot. He funded the building of a clean, modern herbal center. He hired experts to help test and package her herbs safely. He even arranged for legal approval so her herbal chemist could operate properly. The place was named Amara Herbal Care Center. Mr. Bright personally attended the opening ceremony. He stood proudly beside Amara, holding her hand. "This young woman gave me my life back," he told the crowd. "Her kindness should reach many." People began to come. At first, they came quietly, those who had tried hospitals and failed. Then others came, curious. Mothers brought children. Old men came with walking sticks. Women came with long-standing pain. Amara treated everyone with the same care. She listened first. She explained patiently. She never promised miracles, only honesty and effort. Dr. Edward visited often. Sometimes he observed, sometimes he asked questions. Slowly, a partnership grew between modern medicine and traditional knowledge. Mr. Harrison watched all this with pride. One evening, he visited the herbal garden alone. He saw Amara kneeling, planting new herbs carefully, her hands deep in the soil. "You changed my family's story," he said quietly. Amara smiled. "No, sir. I only followed what I was taught to help when you can." Mr. Harrison nodded. "You reminded us that wisdom can come from anywhere." As the sun set over the growing garden, Mr. Bright walked slowly along the path, strong, steady, healed. And in that peaceful moment, it became clear that Amara's gift was not just a herb. It was hope. Amara's life changed, but she did not change herself. Every morning, she arrived early at the herbal garden, tying her hair neatly and washing her hands before touching any plant. She spoke softly to visitors and listened carefully to their problems. She never rushed anyone. To her, healing was not only about herbs, it was also about patience and care. The Amara Herbal Care Center grew quickly. People came from nearby towns and distant villages. Some arrived with pain they had carried for years. Others came after spending all their savings on treatments that did not help. They came because they had heard a simple story. A poor maid saved a billionaire's father when doctors could not. Mr. Bright often visited the center. He walked freely now, without pain or support. Sometimes he sat under the shade of a tree, watching people being attended to. "Each step I take reminds me of you," he once told Amara. Amara smiled. "I am glad you are strong again, sir." Dr. Edward also kept his promise. He worked closely with Amara, helping her document treatments and improve safety. He encouraged young medical students to visit the center and learn. "We must learn humility," he told them. "Knowledge does not belong to one place." Mr. Harrison watched all this with deep satisfaction. One evening, he invited Amara to his office. "You are no longer a maid here," he said gently. "You are a partner in healing." Amara lowered her head respectfully. "Thank you, sir, but please let me remain simple." Mr. Harrison nodded. "Your simplicity is your strength." Months passed. Amara's herbal garden became a place of learning and healing. She trained other young people, especially girls, teaching them how to grow, prepare, and respect herbs. She always reminded them, "Do not claim what you cannot prove. Do not promise what you cannot give." One afternoon, a poor woman arrived carrying her sick child. She was crying, afraid she would be sent away. Amara held her hand. "You are welcome here," she said. After treatment and rest, the child improved. The woman knelt in gratitude, but Amara gently lifted her up. "Stand," she said. "Healing is not a reason to bow. It is a reason to hope." That night, Amara sat alone in the garden, thinking of her grandmother. She whispered softly, "Your teachings live on." Mr. Bright joined her quietly. "Do you know," he said, "many people measure success by money, but you have measured it by lives." Amara smiled. "That is how my grandmother taught me." Soon, the government took notice. Health officials visited the center and praised its cleanliness and honesty. They spoke about supporting cooperation between traditional and modern medicine. But Amara did not chase recognition. She focused on her work. 1 year after Mr. Bright's recovery, a small celebration was held at the garden. People shared stories of healing. Laughter filled the air. Mr. Harrison stood before the crowd. "This place began with pain and fear," he said. "Today it stands for hope. All because a young woman chose kindness over silence." He turned to Amara. "You could have stayed quiet. Why did you speak?" Amara paused, then answered simply, "Because suffering should never be ignored." The crowd fell silent. As the sun set, Amara walked through the rows of herbs, green, healthy, alive. She touched the leaves gently, grateful for the journey. From a poor maid to a respected healer, her story reminded everyone of a simple truth. Help can come from the least expected place. And sometimes, the cure we need is not only in hospitals, but in the wisdom we almost forget to listen to. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you like the story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.